what are the biggest mistakes that you made early on in your data analyst career that you wish you could go back and do differently?
Focusing too much energy on a specific task or a specific project before getting input from other stakeholders. People present this portfolio for like an entry-level data analyst, and it has like all this machine learning algorithms and like advanced methods of using like gradient descent and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, that's great, but like they just need to focus on the basics and understand that in order to, and display those skills in order to land like an entry-level job.
Luke Barousse, welcome to the Super Data Science Podcast. I have wanted to have you on the show for ages. I've been following your brilliant YouTube channel for months and months, and now to have you, not in the flesh, I guess, but interacting with me on screen is such a thrill. Thanks for coming on. Luke, how are you doing? Where are you calling in from?
Heck yeah, doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. First off, when I first got into data analytics, found the Super Data Science Podcast and was just like, oh my God, there's such a wealth of knowledge. So it's awesome to come like sort of like full circle and be on here. So thank you.
Wow, I'm delighted to hear that. Yeah.
And calling from Arkansas in the United States. Sort of the middle of nowhere. I'm near the Walmart's headquarters, no affiliation, but they have some mountain biking here. I like to do mountain biking. And so that's what I'm doing here.
The mountain biking isn't affiliated with the Waltons in any way.
No, it's very much affiliated with the Waltons.
It is. The mountain biking is.
They've poured millions of dollars into building the trails around here. The Waltons are
Really?
big into mountain biking. Yeah,
No
and
kidding.
it's their way to basically build up the city to entice the vendors of Walmart and employees to move to Bentonville, Arkansas.
Wow.
It's building up the trails because now you have this like great little ecosystem. And so people are like, I want to go mountain bike there. And they move here and they have something to do while working for Walmart.
Wow, I had no idea. I was saying that as a sarcastic joke. And
no, not sarcastic at all. I appreciate their millions of dollars they put into the trail. And I get to ride them for free.
Amazing. So your YouTube channel, as I've already mentioned, is incredible, and lots of people think so. At the time of recording, you have over 260,000 subscribers. By the time this episode is live, I'm sure it will be many, many thousands more. So your target market with your videos is primarily aspiring and entry-level data analysts. In the channel, you creatively combine amazing different kinds of videos. Some of them are step-by-step instructions for doing things. Some of them are hot takes. You've got engaging visuals, and my favorites are the humorous skits. Sometimes you do them with other well-known YouTubers, and I just get such a kick out of them. I love them. So Luke, you have an innovative channel. I've never seen anything like it in the space. Where do you draw inspiration on for your next video?
For inspiration, it comes away with anybody. But mainly, I try to go back to whenever I first got into data science and more specifically data analytics. And I try to think of the questions and the issues that I had when I was first starting and like what resources were not there. Because there's a lot of great YouTube videos out there, especially on tutorials. Like I used to do a lot of tutorials. And that's great. It's like, hey, I have this, like I created this Tableau tutorial. But like when I first got into data science, data analytics, I didn't know what Tableau was. I didn't know what visualization softwares were, what the need was. At the time I was going to school for business and I knew I wanted to apply analytics, and somebody came in and gave like a presentation at the time on Tableau and really helped open my eyes to it. But that presentation, like that's not normal, like to understand what this software is used for, right? It's really hard to just get a concise understanding of what different tools are used to accomplish jobs.
Right. So you're providing like context. Like, so you're kind of like thinking if somebody came up to you and was like, hey, like I've heard about this data analytics career, like where do I get started? And like, what are the different kinds of things you do? Those are the kinds of videos you think about. You're going to provide some context for people.
Yeah. And with that, probably a bad analogy, sort of like a gateway drug. It basically make it as easy as possible for people to understand things they need to get into first for this field. So that way they can decide like, hey, maybe this isn't for me. Vice, they don't even know data analytics. And then they spend all this time learning Tableau once again, spend all this time learning Tableau, and then they start implementing it, like, I don't really like this. Instead, look at it holistically, take a step back and provide a big picture look at these things. So that way they can get more of they get this big picture view to figure out if they want to go into it and then what they need to actually focus on. Because there's a lot, I mean, as you know, right, there's so much you can focus on and so much you can look at. I think we got to you need somebody to just provide that basic understanding and big picture what's happening there.
I love that. What's the most gratifying outcome you get out of having this channel and these enormously popular videos?
Yeah. So I was actually just thinking about that the other day. So I've been doing this, I guess, 2 years now, which I mean, I guess isn't that long. But man, I can tell you, I'll finish up a video and then I'll go to upload it. And then I'll upload it for the next morning. And like the night before, like I upload it, like it's like, like a kid whenever you're Christmas is the next day and you're like all excited or whatever. That's how I get with these videos, because I'm like, I don't know what people are going to say. I don't know, but I'm like, I'm looking forward to. I just spent like 2-3 weeks making this video. I'm like, I'm pumped to like release this thing, and I'm excited. Sometimes I can't even sleep. I'm ready to wake up the next morning and just check the comments and see what people are saying.
Yeah.
So that's really what invigorates me, is that cycle of getting to that point of releasing it and then seeing the benefit that it has. And yeah, that's mainly that's just what gives me energy.
Love it. And then in particular, your comedy skits. Where did those ideas come from? Like they're really innovative.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I'll be completely honest. I think I didn't originate those. I mean, they're obviously on YouTube, but I follow this other YouTuber called Julie Noke, and she has a famous YouTube video. It's called explaining the pandemic to my past self. So basically, the pandemic's happening, and you explain it to your past self before, and it was sort of like a skit talking to each other. Anyway, it's a funny little skit, and I'm like, oh, she's just like, she doesn't have any people. She's just using herself and talking to herself. I'm like, I could do that, but with like data science. And I'm like, and so that's what I try to do a lot with my YouTube videos. Just go about a different way of explaining concepts to people. And it's actually pretty interesting. I don't do the skits as much because sometimes they don't resonate as much. But it's very interesting. But I found that this was like my data analyst versus data scientist one. I received a lot of comments around like, one, like new people are like, hey, I don't understand this, but I'm looking forward to whenever I can understand it. And then I've had people that have been like, hey, I've been studying for like 6 months now, and now I can like understand like the jokes in this video. Like, this is awesome. And so it's funny because it can provide, I guess, like a sort of like a goal of people that are new to this field of maybe some inside jokes that they should be able to get.
Yeah, I get that. I suspect that there are some listeners of the Super Data Science podcast out there, for example, that are interested in the field. They're interested in data science and AI. And sometimes we have episodes that get quite technical, but they listen to those episodes anyway because they're like, just kind of understanding the way that people use the language. What are the trendy words? Even if you can't really dig under the meaning of it, just having that, just kind of hearing those conversations happen. Like, I guess kind of like, if you were in an office and there were some people who you were thinking about moving into the kind of role that they have, and you kind of hear them talking over lunch, that might be an interesting conversation to hear, even if you can't totally understand everything.
Right.
But then, as you explore the field more and more and more, you get the inside jokes, you get all the context. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, you got to fake it till you make it. And I like how people can use it for that. And basically just like, hey, get exposed to these different topics, and maybe in a fun way, podcast way, whatever. And over time, I mean, if you're exposing to it enough, you're going to get it.
Yeah, and that especially, I think, if you listen to a lot of episodes of the show or you watch a lot of your videos, people will start to see, oh, SQL, that comes up all the time.
Right. Like that's probably should pay attention to this.
So one of your most popular videos outlines a learning roadmap to become a data analyst. So sounds kind of like the perfect video you're describing for providing the context to people. Do you think that a lot of people get lost or overwhelmed as they start getting into this data analyst career? Do you think it's like overwhelming looking at like you're kind of describing earlier the situation where people might not know what Tableau is, and they look up what they need to know as a data analyst, and all these videos come up about Tableau, and there's like Tableau tutorials, and they're like, I don't even know what this is. I don't even like. They press play and they don't understand what's going on, and so it's kind of overwhelming. You think that I guess that kind of situation must happen a lot with people, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of overwhelming. I actually did a bunch of interviews with my subscribers for those that are entering the field of data analytics and what their biggest problem is, and in it. And there was two main things. One of them was being overwhelmed, and the other one was not really having a lot of social interaction. Basically, because I mean we're in the pandemic, right? Or not in the pandemic. We're through the pandemic, but during the pandemic, you didn't really have a lot of people and a lot of interaction. But the overwhelming aspect, yeah, just exactly to your point. There's so many different things. Where do you focus? And you go to these job descriptions, and you're like, want to be an aspiring data analyst, and they're like, all of them are saying different skills that you need to know. So you're like, what do I need to learn? And so that was really the thought of the process of that video, was to basically narrow down what you should focus on, because I had a lot of problems. I learned tools that I think I wasted my time on. And I was like, I wish I would just had somebody who had been like, hey, focus on these core tools.
Do you have any examples of tools that you wasted your time on off the cuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna bad talk it right now, but like Microsoft Access, I can't stand. You'd have to bleep the cuss words that are going to come out of my mouth. I trash talk it anytime I can. I cannot stand that program because there's such other. I mean, it's outdated program. Microsoft's trying to phase it out, but companies are still using it,
Right.
and they can't get rid of it. And so I'm like, don't learn this. Like, anyway. I need to stop right now. I'm so sorry. But I've also learned, I don't even want to give a shout out to the name of this company because they upset me so bad, an automation tool to extract data. And their whole premise was basically locking businesses in to paying a subscription fee to use this tool to web scrape data. And I found out later that I could just use Python even more easily because it was supposed to be like a low to no code solution. And I actually was having to use code. And so it's like, oh man, I wish I had just known like Python. I would have used that. So yeah, like those two situations, my blood's boiling right now, come to mind. And I'm just like, I'm so glad. I wish somebody would have been like, hey, focus on these things.
Yeah. What Python libraries do you like to use for web scraping? Beautiful Soup?
Yeah, Beautiful Soup, Selenium.
Selenium.
Probably, I mean,
too.
yeah.
Pros and cons between those two?
I couldn't give you that. I can just say I like Selenium mainly because I can have because usually I'm doing like clicking or something or need to like scroll on the page, so I need that like sort of like browser atmosphere. And yeah, I'm just used to it, so I just stick with it.
This episode is brought to you by Iterative, the open source company behind DVC, one of the most popular data and experiment versioning solutions out there. Iterative is on a mission to offer machine learning teams the best developer experience with solutions across model registry, experimentation, CI/CD training automation, and the first unstructured data catalog and query language built for machine learning. Find out more at www.iterative.ai. That's www.iterative.ai. Cool. Well, we're going to talk more about your favorite tools later in the episode, but let's kind of get back to where we were in the conversation about people getting started in data analytics. So, what is the most significant assumption you think aspiring data analysts make when planning out their careers? And I guess a kind of interesting twist on that question, like what are the assumptions they make that are misplaced about a data analyst career?
Yeah, Alex Anos I think was talking about this. So I don't want to steal his idea, but I'm basically going to steal his idea. I already made a LinkedIn post about it recently. I think people think that you have to go, especially for data analytics, right? Data analysts, they want like an employer needs like basic things done with data analytics, whether it's Excel, SQL, Python, R, whatever. Just like basic tasks done to analyze data. And I think one of his recent LinkedIn posts, he was talking about people present this portfolio for like an entry level data analyst, and it has like all this machine learning algorithms and like
Right.
like advanced like methods of using like gradient descent and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, that's great, but like you just need to like I need just like this. I need you to analyze this like budget that I have right here, and maybe provide some deficiencies. I don't think we're going to use a machine learning algorithm on it.
Right.
Uh, so I think people, one, they get a little too overwhelmed, and they can go, they can think that they need to know it stuff way more advanced than they actually need to, and that they just need to focus on the basics and understand that in order to and display those skills in order to land like an entry level job.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty similar. We recently had Shashank Kalanathi on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you probably know
Love me
him.
some Shashank. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he was in episode number 623, and that was something that he said too. He was like, for data analytics, for an entry level data analyst role, I might not be able to remember totally off the cuff here, but he was saying things like you've got to have some understanding of BI tools, maybe something like Tableau, and he was like, you can learn Tableau in a weekend, and then spend a couple of weeks learning simple SQL queries, uh, be able to do some relatively advanced Excel stuff like VLOOKUPs, and you're set. On the job, then you can maybe learn some Python that'll help you automate some things. But he was like, you can be prepared for a data analyst career in a couple of months if you focus on it full time.
Yes, so true. If you can just focus, I like how you talked about those tools specifically from him, because that's exactly what I would recommend. And like my first job, I just knew mainly Excel. But then I got the job, and then I started to learn Power BI and implementing Power BI in my job. Then my next job, I started implementing SQL and also had to do Tableau. So started learning that. And so you can sort of snowball and learn more tools as you progress in your career. But you have to start first at those core tools to even get the job.
Nice. Tell us about Power BI. That's also a Microsoft tool, right? So you mentioned Microsoft Access earlier. I don't want to like get you fuming again, but uh, so it sounds like Microsoft can build tools that
Yeah.
are useful. I mean, obviously Excel, famous,
Hmm.
probably the most widely used data analysis tool on the planet. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, so what's the difference? Like, why did somebody start using Power BI instead of Excel? What does it do differently?
I think so. The ability to actually build succinct dashboards that
Mm,
that people can't mess with.
right.
Because like whenever I first started, I made one of my first roles as a data analyst. I made this dashboard in Excel, and like you can make dashboards in Excel, but then
I didn't know
one,
that.
how do they're I mean they're sort of clunky. Two, but then how do you share this Excel dashboard? You have
Right.
to send the file, and then what happens whenever you have to update it? You have to send the new file.
Right.
Um, and I guess you could host it. You could host it like on Excel Online, but then. Um, but
People can
then,
mess with
like the
your
dash
cells.
you
People
can
could,
mess with your
yeah,
cells, you can
yeah,
mess with stuff.
yeah.
So that's why I like Power BI. Power BI can make it's a dashboard solution, provides visualizations, um, and I can use this within Microsoft, this Power BI service, make this dashboard that people can't mess with, and well, that they can like play with, but they can't
Right, right, right.
destroy.
You can give them like knobs and drop down menus that they can choose.
Slicers, yeah, clicks, whatever they want to do. I can set up this controlled environment for them to go in, use the data, and then this dashboard can connect to a variety of sources, which may be Excel files, it may be a SQL database or whatever. And so that's why I'm like, oh, I'm really bullish on Power BI. I just love it. I mean, Tableau is just as good. I don't think either one's different. It depends on what the company's using. But I'm a fan of Power BI, and I've made a couple of courses on it. So I'm just like, uh, yeah, I'm very biased towards it.
Super cool. We haven't talked about Power BI very much on the show at all, so I'm delighted that you can provide us with a bit of an introduction to
Yeah.
it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing that I want to add to that is the one problem that I have with Power BI still. So Tableau is great for visualization softwares. You usually have Tableau and Power BI. Tableau has this thing called Tableau Public, and you can go and share your dashboards very easily on Tableau Public.
Mm,
And so people can go in and look at your dashboard, play with whatever data is connected to, and it's really great. Microsoft Power BI doesn't have anything public facing like that. Like, so if you're within an organization, you can use your organization's Microsoft suite and like share it internally. Um, but like if I wanted to build a dashboard me without an organization and to be able to share that dashboard, I can't really do that easy. And so that's what like one major drawback I want to just capture on.
nice. Super cool. All right. So we've talked about some assumptions that people might make early in their data analyst career that are maybe misled. How about you, Luke? What are the biggest mistakes that you made early on in your data analyst career that you wish you could go back and do differently?
Yeah, so I think that the one of the biggest mistakes besides the not picking the right tools is then once getting into my job itself or any project, if you will. Um, I think one of the biggest problems I had was focusing too much energy on a specific task or a specific project before getting input from other stakeholders.
Right.
So I guess an example of that was like in my first job, right? I'm building this product and I built out this, talked about this Excel dashboard, built out this Excel dashboard. And I was like, oh, we're going to do so many different metrics on it. We're going to be doing standard deviation, variance, all these different things. And I spent like, weeks on this thing. And then like I gave it to my boss and it did have the information that he wanted. But unfortunately, there was a lot of information and a lot of time that I spent adding other things that wasn't any value add to the project
Right.
and didn't provide any insights. And I wish I could tell you that only did that mistake once, but I did that in follow-on projects. And so that's why I want to bring it up now, is because it happened more than once. And it's mainly, hey, you work on something, get insights, get quick feedback. Even if it's not a final product, it's always good to have those stakeholders or whoever you're building this for to look at it and maybe provide that feedback to make sure you're going on the right track. So you're not going to waste unnecessary time. Because I did learn some more skills while doing that, but it wasn't I didn't get to where I needed to as efficiently as I could have.
Nice. So get feedback early and often is a tip that
Mhm.
you wish you could give to your past self. Just like the woman that inspired with that COVID video, talking to her past self.
Right, exactly.
Really good. Um, in addition to your data analytics career, you have had some tangential entrepreneurial undertakings. So, in 2019, you founded a lifestyle startup called MacroFit to improve health through meal prep. And this is something that resonates deeply with me. I am a big meal prep subscriber. I subscribe to two different meal prep services. I guess I might as well mention them on air so that people are aware if that's something you're thinking of. To me, this is a really obvious thing. So before we even started recording this episode, Luke and I talked for about half an hour about CrossFit. So
Yeah.
him and I have very much drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't think it's an unfounded drinking of Kool-Aid.
CrossFit.
It is, if you're interested in forging elite fitness, there's no easier way than being disciplined about going to CrossFit. It's a key thing. It's easy if you're disciplined about doing it. The thing that makes it so easy is that you have a community that propels you. When you know that you're going to be doing that workout against someone who's maybe been doing it about as long as you, they come to the same class time as you want to beat them a bit. But you also want to celebrate like your progress with other people. You want to cheer on other people's progress. And so just having this community, and it's also been an amazing place for me personally to meet tons of great professional connections, because unlike a lot of gyms out there, a lot of other like non-CrossFit gym experiences I've had, people put their headphones in, they just kind of watch like TVs that are on as they sit at a machine. But when you go to a CrossFit gym, like a lot of CrossFit gyms, like you're not even allowed to wear headphones. Like you certainly can't in class time. Like you gotta be paying attention. Everyone's in sync. And so you get to meet a lot of people. You show up at the same class time every day. You're going to make a lot of friends. You meet a lot of professional connections. It's just such a wonderful community. And then once you start doing that for a little bit, you'll start to realize that people in the CrossFit community, it's not just about the fitness. It's about so many other aspects of your life that support fitness. So getting a good night's sleep, not drinking too much, stretching, and things like diet. Diet is super important to being able to grow muscles, to be able to expand your cardiovascular capacity, to have energy throughout the day, especially if you are working out in part of your day. So super, super important to have great nutrition. And for me, it's been a no-brainer for many years that the easiest way for me to get the macronutrients that I need. So, there's these kinds of rules of thumb, like you should eat as many grams of protein per day as you have pounds of body weight in order to sustain or grow muscle mass. And then depending on how much you're working out, you're also going to need carbs. So sometimes people will be like, keto, it's hard to be a serious athlete and be keto because you need carbs as fuel for your workouts. So depending on how much you're working out, and you might want to work with a nutritionist or a CrossFit coach or somebody to kind of give you some guidelines on how many grams of carbs, fat, and protein you might want to get in a day. But you can do your own meal prep. So one of the most time-consuming ways of getting all your macros right is to be weighing all your food. Maybe you spend your Sunday like doing meal prep for the week. Some people they'll get groups together where you're like, okay, every fourth week you've got a new meal prep for 4 people, including yourself. So people will do things like that. For me, I was like, there's meal delivery services. They tell you exactly the macros on each meal. So I get this pre-weighed for 3 meals a day, 6 days a week. I've got pre-weighed meal containers that come from two services I use. These are both US-based services, but Territory and MegaFit Meals. Territory has a bit more vegetables, but so I like that, and they're really really yummy.
I'm gonna check out that out.
Yeah, Territory is good for that, but Territory also, like, there tends to be a bit more fat in the meals. It's hard for me to hit my lower fat targets on the macro plan that I'm on. And so there's this other company, MegaFit Meals, which the meals aren't as yummy, and they definitely don't have enough vegetables. But in terms of hitting your macros, like, they have tons of meals with like 5 grams of fat, 50 grams of carbs, 50 grams of protein. And so a few meals like that in the day, and I'm off to the races with hitting my macro targets for the day. So all of that lead up was to say that you also, Luke, created MacroFit to improve health through meal prep. So could you elaborate on this particular business idea? What was it about? What motivated you? And what did you learn?
Yeah. Actually, this has a lot of synergies, I think, with your first point about community with CrossFit. Sort of like we're doing here in data science, right? You want to have like-minded people to understand what everybody else is doing for data science, where you should be going and how to improve your career. Same thing with, I think, CrossFit and this. You're trying to have a community to know where to go. And that was one of the problems that I noticed, was that this meal prep, and specifically this macros, it's very difficult. So macronutrients, like you explained, right? This protein, carbs, fat, we have certain amounts that you need to do, or you want to hit, and they all make up how many calories you get in a day. Mm-hmm. If you're below or above your certain calorie target for the day, you can either gain or lose weight. And so, like, these are numbers that I'm talking about, right? Like grams of these macronutrients or numbers of calories. These are numbers. So, like, you could use, this is data. So I'm like, I could turn this into a data science project. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can automate, because it's so, like, you're talking about, like, I went over fats because I have too much fats in my, in this one meal. I'm like, okay, I want to make a solution that can basically tell me what I need to eat. So I know I want to eat 3 meals a day. Tell me with each meal, one, the macronutrients I need to hit, and then also maybe make some recommendations of what I need to eat in order to hit those macronutrients. And so that's what my goal was. I built this in Microsoft Excel which started as a project, as a project in college with a bunch of other people. And then I took it further after that class. So I want to make sure I give credit to those people I worked with initially in my school project. And we actually used macros, like Excel macros, like Microsoft Excel macros. So we called the program at the time macros for macros, because we use Excel macros. One of the girls in my group came up with that title. I'm like, oh yeah, we got to use this. So anyway, that's all we really did, right? So we knew, what you could. We built this Excel sheet where it was like, hey, you know what your current weight is, what weight you want to get to. So you could you do the calculation in Excel of how many calories you need to do in order to lose this weight over how many weeks. And then from there, we broke down the calories further with Excel into different macronutrients. And then I downloaded, I went to the like USDA or whatever the food place is that gave the data for foods and their caloric and their macronutrients. I got all that data, and from there I built basically a simple little algorithm, or we built this. I want to make sure I credit right. We built this algorithm that basically would tell you, okay, this meal I need to eat 1 cup of rice. You need to have 5 ounces of steak, and you have a cup of veggies, and maybe some sort of fat, like a half avocado, and it would tell you every single meal what you needed to do. And so that was the data science project. It was so crazy because I got to use Excel, use this data. It's sort of a different way. It wasn't doing analytics, but it was using data and calculating what you needed to do. And so that got me into, after the project was done, in that I was like, I can make this into an app. And that's once again gets into tools that I shouldn't have learned as a data analyst that I did. But I got into learning a web framework with Python into learning Django or Django.
Yeah.
I don't know why I pronounced the D. Django.
I was like, is that how you pronounce Django?
No, it's not. And I said it. I mispronounced it in one of my videos. What's that?
Oh, really? You mispronounced it in a video?
I mispronounced one of the videos. I was like, Django. And everybody's like, this isn't the Quentin Tarantino movie. It's Django. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, wow. But during the pandemic or during whatever, when you don't have people around you to like talk to, you say things that you don't know because you're not talking to people.
Yeah. What do you think about the Super Data Science podcast? Every episode, I strive to create the best possible experience for you, and I'd love to hear how I'm doing at that. For a limited time, we have a survey up at superdatascience.com/survey, where you can provide me with your invaluable feedback on what you enjoy most about the show, and critically, about what we could be doing differently, what I could be improving for you. The survey will only take a few minutes of your time, but it could have a big impact on how I shape the show for you for years to come. So now's your chance. The survey is available at superdatascience.com/survey. That's superdatascience.com/survey. One big one for me for a long time was the word awry. AWRY. Awry.
Yeah.
I didn't map saying, like, I would say awry verbally to people. I didn't know how to spell it. Like I'm talking like until my late 20s.
Yeah.
I didn't really like ever think about how you'd spell awry. And then whenever I read it in a book, I was like, Ori. And I kind of knew what it meant.
Yeah.
I didn't really realize that they're the same word. So I get that. But in terms of a podcast, you actually mispronouncing Django as Django helps people find that tool. Although now you're not even recommending it. So
no, now I'm like, but that's what, like, one of the tools I was learning, because I was like, I'm going to build this app. And that's not what data analysts should be doing. That's like the data analyst that's like submitting their machine learning algorithms to get this like, it's not something I should have done. And I wasted a lot of time and effort trying to build this app that eventually just like, I was like, Django is like really hard and really difficult web framework. And I could have been spending my time on other things. Anyway, so I eventually abandoned it. But during that time, I was trying to promote this, and I was using Instagram and also YouTube to try to promote this application. And so that's really how I got into social media. was through this data
Oh.
science, trying to promote this application via social medias.
Oh, wow. That ties in really nicely to my motto, to my favorite saying, Luke, which is it's a Latin phrase. It's qui audit adipiscator. And I did a whole episode on it, episode number 610. It translates into English as who dares wins, where
Hmm.
by trying your project, by trying the MacroFit project, that got you into doing social media stuff that has now turned into this incredible YouTuber career that you have, where you're inspiring hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people. And so this whole idea is that when you do something, when you take action, especially if that action is audacious, then even if you don't achieve the initial outcome that you envisioned, which is creating this nutrition app, great things will come from it. Who
Yeah.
dares wins.
Huh. That's crazy. That sounds interesting. Yeah. No, I think that relates because it was just so crazy because it was just like, yeah, I was like, the goal was to build this app. And then I started like, I was from my Instagram, I was like taking pictures of food. Uh, as silly as that might sound, but it was actually sort of fun. And I enjoyed the social media aspect. And I'm like, I actually like this social media aspect better than and sharing this data insights, but I like this better than actually trying to build this Django app. And so that's crazy.
Yeah, cool career transition, Luke. And it isn't the only super cool career transition that you've had due to taking on audacious challenges. And it's interesting because that who dares win quote was popularized in recent centuries by the British Royal Air Force.
Hmm.
And one of the most interesting things about you is that for 7 years, you were a submariner in the Navy. And in order to run a nuclear submarine, you were trained in nuclear engineering. That's wild to me. That's such a cool specialization to have about the world. Wow. So, can you tell us a bit about that experience? And did nuclear physics help in your data analyst career later?
Yeah. So I served 7 years in the United States Navy, specifically in the submarine force, which all of our submarines in the United States Navy use nuclear power. And yeah, it was a crazy time. Just so much time. I spent almost close to 2 years of my life underneath water, and
Wow.
it's just like, oh, like my 20s completely gone because, or not, I wouldn't say completely gone. It was a great time, great learning experience, but like so much time away from family and friends, out to sea, running a submarine, going places. And so there's parts that I miss, especially like the camaraderie and everything like that.
Right.
But then there's parts of like I'm looking out of a window right now. Like I actually have a window and I can go outside later. Whereas I would go like on this submarine, I would go underwater for 3, 4 months at a time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We go,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah. We just go for 3 or 4 months at a time. The only thing we're really limited by, because it's nuclear power, we can make our own power, we can make our own water. We're limited by food. And so that's whenever we have to come back to land. We actually our submarine is not one of the bigger ones, and so we'd have to. There wasn't a lot of food storage, and so you'd actually have like cans of food on the ground, and we put plywood on top of it, and then you would eat those cans of food as you and then you could remove the plywood. But sometimes like some of that way where areas that you walk through the submarine, it was even shorter than usual because you had these cans of food that you had to walk on.
Wow, that is so interesting. I had no idea. I kind of
Yeah.
thought it would be like 3 or 4 days at most. I thought and then my liberal estimate, once you started saying 3 to 4, I thought at most you'd say weeks. 3 to 4
Yeah.
months, that's wild. So how do you make the water? You take salt water and then you use, like, nuclear energy to, like, desalinate it?
Yeah, so they have 2 different type I mean, I hope this isn't classified, I don't think it is, it's pretty open knowledge, I think. You can either, like, boil the water, I'll give, general examples. You can either boil the water, they're called, like, an evaporator, and so you use this, like, a hot water and, boil the water and it cleans the water, or you use a reverse osmosis unit, which is more just, like, powered through electricity to shock it and get out the
Yeah.
clean water.
Right.
We had the, evaporator option on mine. And
Yeah.
yeah, you can only make so much, right? So you have to, and you can only make it so fast. So water conservation, like they call it, they have like submarine showers. You're supposed to like get in, bathe real quick, like you wet yourself, shower down,
Mhm.
turn off the water, like soap up, and then rinse off and then get out. You're not supposed to like
Right.
waste water. So
Right. I mean, that's amazing that there's enough to be showering at all. Like, that's wild.
yeah.
It
Well, I'm just that I mean the submarines are pretty they're pretty oh I mean they're such fascinating things because I mean like a football field long, right? And just like tanks galore with freshwater tanks, sanitary tanks to store your waste,
Mhm.
ballast tanks, so large tanks to ballast the ship up and down. And it's just but I guess this sort of relates to your question, right? Of how does this relate to my analytical career? So a lot of that stuff I didn't realize at the time, but we're dealing with data at real time on a
Mhm.
submarine. So you have
Mhm.
to analyze this data all the time. So like if I was so I had to work in the for a little bit in the engineering power plant. So I would run the nuclear reactor, me and a team of like 10 other individuals. And we have to look at all these different gauges, monitor pressure inside of the reactor, temperature inside the reactor, look at trends, you have to plot it. And so there's a lot of like look at chemistry, understand the trends that are going on with the chemistry inside of it. Anyway,
Mhm.
there's a lot of numbers. And so there's a lot of understanding behind what's happening with the data and where it's going. So it was just sort of second nature whenever I got into transition to a data analyst coming from that role because it's like I'm surrounded by numbers like all the time.
Mhm.
This is just now I have I don't want to talk bad about the government, but this now I have just better tools to analyze the data now because we were like doing like paper logs, and the Navy has improved like the paper logs, like recording these numbers for all these things, and we've improved in that way. But now I have like advanced tools that I can analyze the stuff and do some more trend analysis. So yeah, there's I guess pros and cons.
Ah, super cool. Really delighted that we had that question to ask you because, wow, I just learned some amazing things. So another project, another kind of career twist that you're working on right now, though it firmly rooted in now your data analysis and data science, and even your web scraping experience specifically. You alluded before we started recording to me about a job data collection project. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I started that like last year. Well, so I have all these. So well, I'm a data analyst, obviously, right? And you have all these people asking me like, "Hey, what are the top skills? What skills should I be focusing on?" And like I could tell them like, uh, I could tell them what it is, what I think it is. But it's like, but what's the data say? And so I'm like, I need to
Right.
get the data. So you have like Stack Overflow. If anybody doesn't know, Stack Overflow is like a coding website and it collects all these coding questions you can go on and see it. Anyway, they provide a survey every year that will tell people what are most popular languages, what are the
Mhm.
most popular SQL databases. Like it's like actual data of what's important, but it's more focused for developers and web developers or um, I mean, there are a sprinkle of data scientists and stuff in there, but mostly it's,
Mhm.
I think, good development. Anyway,
Right.
they have data. It's like sound data. You can look at it. There's nothing like that for data analysts. And it's like, where do you go to collect that? How do you know what jobs require what skills? So I was like, I need to collect this from job postings. So last year I built this Python bot because I didn't want to use that one solution that I talked about from work. That was like basically a money Ponzi scheme that I feel. I used Python instead to go into LinkedIn, which not really allowed, but did it anyway. Go into LinkedIn and scrape job postings of data science roles, data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, scrape all that data, and then from there, pick out those course, just go through and pick out what skills, and then from there, aggregate it to find out what is the most popular skills. So I did that for like 3 months last year, like running this bot every single day. I got a ton of job postings, a ton of data, and actually was able to go in and list. So I like Excel, SQL being the top two skills, and then from there, the visualization tools and programming languages, so Power BI, Tableau, Python and R. They're all about equal. So those are basically the top 8 skills that I found as data analysts. And sorry, funny side note real quick, because I was thinking about that today. I shared this, and Excel was like the number 1 from the data because I finally had this, and somebody like multiple people commented like, Excel's not a core skill of data analysts, and I'm like, I'm literally showing you what the data says. Like how, like, don't be mad at me. I'm showing you what the data is. The data says Excel is the most popular skill. I don't like it. I don't like it either. I would much rather be Python, but don't be mad at me. Anyway, I ran into a lot of issues with LinkedIn trying to block me doing the web scraping. So I sort of halted it after a while, and I'm trying to get back into it. I'm working with a company right now to try and get this data and actually start collecting it on a daily basis. And what I would love to do is continue this project, is continue to collect it over time. And you know how like they have the those races of like programming languages over time. Like, what's the most popular programming language? You could watch it like, oh, Python, like in 1992, it was nothing, but now it's like, oh, it's high up there.
Yeah.
That's like the goal. Collect this on a daily basis, just indefinitely, and start mapping out what is the most popular skill so people knows they can go and they can focus on the top skills for data analysts.
Yeah. So I know that you don't have this developed yet, but just based on your experience, do you have any predictions as to what tools someone who's interested in getting into data analysis today should be learning? Like, what are the tools of the future that people should be learning today?
Yeah, I think it's not changing very quick for data analysts.
Right.
Unfortunately, like I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like we're sort of slow moving in regards to that, in regards to technology. Yeah, specifically for data analytics, I feel it. So I'm still pretty Excel and SQL feel like first 2 main ones, and then a programming language and a visualization tool, and that's what I would stick with.
Right. All right. Well,
Are those?
what about just like, are there anything like Python libraries or anything that you're like really excited about right now that you think people should get into? Something or like a tool or approach that you've recently discovered that you're like, oh man, I really need to dig into that and learn more about it.
Yeah, I'm really yes. So I have an answer for that. Data, and it really relates to data engineering, because as a data analyst, that's the biggest problem that I've found. Like this problem right here, I need this data of job posting, and it's not easy to get. It's a data engineering problem, and a lot of my subscribers are they'll get this like Google Data Analytics certificate, and they'll actually go into data engineering because it's such strong demand.
Right.
So tools around data engineering, I think, are invaluable to learn, whether that be around how to manage databases like Snowflake, Databricks, or how to do orchestration. Like I like Airflow, which is like a library of Python. I really like that language and think that's so cool. Those type of things, that would be sort of the fun things that what I want to learn, but I would not, unfortunately, I wouldn't be like, you're an entry level data analyst, you should go learn Airflow. I would be like, you need to focus on Excel and SQL. But if
Yeah,
you
but
want to continue.
yeah, it's a great answer though for the question that I asked of like, what can they be doing to prepare for the future? And I think this is something, as data sets continue to get exponentially larger every year, increasingly data analysts, to be effective, are going to have to be able to do some of their data engineering.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a company would have to hire a separate data engineer to be providing data to one or more data analysts, which is an added expense.
Right.
So if they could find somebody that could do both, it could be ideal. And that
Yeah.
was actually Shashank in his episode also talked about how he thinks that the best data engineers are people who used to be data analysts, which is a
Mm-hmm.
transition that he's made. And he says when you know what the downstream user is going to need, when you appreciate their concerns, you're going to be better at extracting the data and providing those data to them.
Yep. And I think like once again, that gateway drug, data analysts are like that. Like once you're that entry level data analyst, you sort of like peek into data engineers, data scientists. or maybe a more advanced data analyst, and you can then like choose where you feel like you should focus more.
Nice. Well, then I think you actually have kind of answered the question that we had. So, prior to you being on the show, I posted on LinkedIn and Twitter and asked if people had questions for you. And Matthias Baudino, who is a BI analyst at a company called Brain Technology, he wants to know what you expect of your own future. So maybe you can expand a little. You can try to look in your crystal ball a little further in your career. But he says, does Luke see himself moving to a leading role or moving to a role more focused in data science? He says, you're always giving advice to aspiring or new data analysts, but he'd love to know your own thoughts about how you'd like to move forward with your data analyst career. So we kind of already got a sense that data engineering is in that vision, but I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add, maybe looking further beyond, like where would you like to be in a decade?
Yeah. I love data science, but I love, as we talked about already, I love the social media aspect
Mhm.
and being able to bridge people. That's really, I don't really, I don't look to be a CEO or a lead data analyst or lead data science. I'm not, I want to learn about new technologies and I want to be able to share that with others. And I think social media provides that platform for me to grow mentally and then also share it. So that's where I want to grow is through YouTube. And like you talked about at the beginning, I'm focusing on entry level data analysts, but I'd love to expand this to help more than just entry level data analysts in the future.
I love that answer. And I'm so excited that that's your answer because it means that I get to continue to enjoy more and more Luke Barousse YouTube content in the future. I love it. All right, Luke. So those are all the questions I've got for you. Before we end the episode, I always ask for a book recommendation. You got one for us?
Yeah, so I guess top book. Actually, I made a video on it, but for data analysts and also data scientists and maybe even data engineers, I would recommend Storytelling with Data with Cole Affleck. She was on the Super Data Science podcast, and it's such a insightful book into how to communicate with data. And it's actually funny enough. I read this years ago, and this book was actually a huge motivator, not only from my prior social media experience, but this was like a huge motivator for me to try to tell stories with my YouTube channel with data. And so, um, anyway, besides that, I think it's a must read, and it's so easy to read, and it just provides such immense amounts of detail and insights that I'm like, I can't recommend it enough.
That is a cool recommendation. Yeah. So Cole Nussbaumer Knaflick, she was in episode number 395. And somebody, I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So some listener out there is like, you bonehead, John Krohn. I know who it was in a very recent episode. Somebody else recommended that same book. Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So really, really popular recommendation.
I wonder if Shashank did because he also he interviewed her on his video movie or in his YouTube channel. I think and she has a new book out too. So
Yeah, there's a good chance. There's a good chance it's Shashank. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, this is not. I've had this conversation recently. So yeah, super cool recommendation, and that was a very strong recommendation. Must read from Luke Barousse,
yeah,
and also recommended by someone else, possibly Shashank.
yeah.
So check it out, listeners. And then it was episode number 395 of the Super Data Science podcast that she was on. Sounds like maybe we should be having her on again because of her next book.
Yeah, yeah. I would.
Cool. Well, there's a thought. All right, Luke. Well, obviously, people know that if they want to keep tracking your career after this, your YouTube channel is probably the primary place to do it. Any other places that people should be following you?
YouTube mainly. That's where I want to focus most of my effort. I need to beef up my crew, and mainly I need an editor. But that and then LinkedIn is the main two places. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, but
Nice. All right. Well, we'll be sure to include your social media links in the show notes for this episode. Luke, I had such a great time chatting with you today. It's been such a fun episode. Thank you for coming on. It's been an honor to meet you, and I look forward to catching up with you again sometime soon.
Heck yeah. Thank you for having me on. Wish we could have talked more about CrossFit, but I'm glad we talked about data.
Wow, I loved chatting with Luke today. What a guy. In today's episode, Luke filled us in on how Selenium and Beautiful Soup are his favorite web scraping libraries, how data analysts don't need machine learning projects in their portfolio to get an entry-level role. Instead, they should focus on the essentials, namely Excel, SQL, a dashboarding tool like Tableau or Power BI, and maybe a programming language like Python or R. He told us how his biggest mistake in his early career was not getting regular enough feedback from stakeholders on consulting projects. He also told us how his experience with real-time submarine data was foundational for his data analyst career, while trying to build his MacroFit data product was instrumental in him becoming a full-time content creator. And he told us how familiarity with data engineering tools like Snowflake, Databricks, and Airflow will prepare you for the data jobs of the future. As always, you can get all the show notes, including the transcript for this episode, the video recording, any materials mentioned on the show, the URLs for Luke's social media profiles, as well as my own social media profiles at superdatascience.com/631. That's superdatascience.com/631. Every single episode, I strive to create the best possible experience for you, and I'd love to hear how I'm doing at that. For a limited time, we have a survey up at superdatascience.com/survey where you can provide me with your invaluable feedback on the show. Again, our quick survey is available at superdatascience.com/survey. Thanks to my colleagues at Nebula for supporting me while I create content like this Super Data Science episode for you. And thanks, of course, to Ivana, Mario, Natalie, Serge, Sylvia, Zara, and Kirill on the Super Data Science team for producing another magnificent episode for us today. For enabling this super team to create this free podcast for you, we are deeply grateful to our sponsors. Please consider supporting the show by checking out our sponsors' links, which you can find in the show notes. And if you yourself are interested in sponsoring an episode, you can get the details on how by making your way to johnkrohn.com/podcast. Last but not least, thanks to you for listening all the way to the end of the show. Until next time, my friend, keep on rocking it out there, and I'm looking forward to enjoying another round of the Super Data Science podcast with you very soon.